like last time, Mayor, if you want me to read it.
Thank you. You ready, Kyle?
Yeah, everybody's emitting in right now.
Okay. This is notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarque, Texas will conduct a workshop via teleconference Zoom on Monday, June 8th, 2020, beginning at 6 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following agenda. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I would ask that the Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor, you're here. Mayor Pro Tem? No, I don't see him on there. Okay. District B?
Councilman Lane has previously texted the city manager and myself that he had an emergency tonight. Without objection, we'll consider that an excused absence.
Have you heard from Mayor Pro Tem Bell?
No,
No.
ma'am.
No. Okay. Council Member District C, Mitch Titch? I hear you. I see you.
Present.
Councilmember McCullough, Council Lady, District D.
I'm here.
Just so two out.
So,
I see Keith. Keith is here.
I'm
Great.
here.
awesome.
Okay. Good.
So we, just for your information, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Lane had an emergency, but we do have a quorum, and without any objection, of course, we will consider that an excused absence.
Sounds good.
Item 3 is the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Actually, we're not doing that any longer, but we do ask God's blessing, and of course, we pray for our great country. Item 4 is citizens' participation, limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public. At this time, any person with city-related business who has signed up, of course, that sign up obviously will be via Zoom tonight, may speak to council on a specific agenda item limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. Do we have any speakers?
I show several people. Jeff Ebersol, is he with a Ventures company?
I'm with Costello Engineering. I'm here just for the Ambrose PDD that's later on the agenda, but I'm with the engineering firm.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Stephen Cook, were you wanting to speak, Mr. Cook? I show Austin, Keith Austin.
I'm with Costello Engineering.
Mr. Austin, are you wanting to speak during the public?
Ambrose PDD that's later on the agenda, but I'm with engineering.
Brandon Boozer,
Yes, ma'am. I'm with the MI Homes for the PD for Ambrose.
okay. Joshua Truska, were you willing to speak?
I'm with I-45 now. No comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, have they also, David C?
Yes, this is David Corbett. I'm here with Costello Engineers also for the Ambrose PDD.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Richard, don't have a last name.
Yes, it's Richard Haddock, and I'm with 7 Gym Planning, here to present for the Ambrose.
Oh, okay. Have a, don't have anybody else.
I'm here.
Sorry.
My name is Stephen Cook. I would like to.
I don't know if I was called before or renamed.
Stephen Cook,
Yes.
go ahead, sir.
Oh, hello. My name's Stephen Cook. I'm a resident of 607 Ross Street here in Lamarck. So that's District D, as I found out. But I've emailed each of y'all over the past week different concrete solutions to these various problems. I've received feedback from my council representative, Councilwoman McAlfee. Sorry if I butchered that. And that's all. I just, I've sent y'all concrete solutions. She told me y'all were discussing this in the workshop, and I'm just kind of here to see this and amongst other things that are on the agenda I see. So I just want to let y'all know y'all be hearing from me for the duration and definitely in November. That's all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cook. We appreciate that. Anyone else?
I don't show anybody new.
All right, moving on to item 5, new business, Mr. Jackson for the workshop.
I think you're muted, sir. Thank you, Chief. Mayor, Council, good evening. First item that we have on the workshop tonight is item 5A, which is discussion related to approving the purchase of 3 Lucas chest compression systems. I have Chief Weidman on here to answer additional questions. If you all remember last year during the budget workshop, I believe it was in there, Chief Weidman brought in a Lucas chest compression system so we could look at it. It was one of the items that we were talking about trying to add in to onto our fire EMS vehicles as a safety measure to help with anybody we had that needed chest compressions, anybody that needed CPR. The onslaught of the COVID virus and everything that we've seen with the COVID virus, we're really looking at trying to maintain distance between our employees and anybody that we need to help as much as we can. This chest compression system basically allows you to administer CPR without having to keep at the same close proximity to a person that needs it as you would without it. And I don't know if you guys have been watching, but over the last 5 days, 6 days, we've seen the number of COVID cases in Galveston County just absolutely skyrocket with a high one day of 40. We've had 2 days over 30. Every other day has been over 20. We're about probably 20% of the total cases we've actually had in the last 6 days out of a 3-month period. So obviously the number of cases is significantly increasing. And so we talked about this after the council meeting last month and decided that this would be one way that we could, one thing that we could use funding from the CARES Act to try to make sure that we're keeping our employees safe and providing the best service that we could, that we can provide to our citizens. So you have all the documents in your packet related to the costs and to what the systems provide. Again, we're looking at utilizing CARES funding to cover that. And if you have any questions, I'll let Chief Weidman, or Chief, if you have anything you want to add in, go ahead and add it in. If not, we'll answer any questions that you have on 5A.
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem, and Honorable Council. As we navigate through these unprecedented times, our efforts have been aimed at ensuring reducing exposure to our personnel when having patient contact. The efforts have ranged from proper use of personal protective equipment to operational changes. To date, we have been successful in ensuring our first responders are safe and have reduced exposures. The reward of this has been in none of your firefighters having a significant exposure or testing positive for COVID-19. We've had approximately 6 of our personnel tested, including myself, for various reasons. Why is this important? Due to limited personnel, a positive test can lead to an exposure list requiring quarantine, which would cripple our staffing in response to questions. This would cripple our staffing and have a negative impact on the level of care we provide. As we've researched other avenues to reduce the exposure, and we've instituted several administrative controls, one type of call increases our vulnerability. I'm referring to CPR calls where we have many personnel working closely to a patient. On average, we have 5 of these calls monthly. While a paramedic is securing an airway, typically 2 to 3 personnel will be within a hot zone performing compressions. The reason it takes so many performing this life-saving skill is due to fatigue and the drive to perform consistent compressions. For adequate tissue oxygenation, it's essential that healthcare providers minimize these interruptions in chest compressions and therefore maximize the amount of time the chest compressions to keep the blood flow generated. This allows us to increase the chance of survivability for our residents and patients. The Lucas device we presented to you does not fatigue or inadvertently interrupt compressions, and it provides a consistent depth and rate of chest compressions. Logistically, it frees up 3 personnel and improves access to the patient. The patient can safely move and transported while undergoing CPR, while limiting the potential exposure to our personnel. We would like to ask your consideration and approval to purchase 3 Lucas chest compression systems. They'll be placed in both frontline medic unit and 1 on the EMS administrators units. And that's it.
Okay, any questions on item 5A?
Yes, sir. Chief, the CARES Act, is that 100% replacement reimbursement?
It is. It's 100% reimbursement on the equipment. Yes, it is.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions on 5A? Okay, moving on to item 5B, discussion relating to ratifying city manager's approval of expenditures to Stanley Equipment Incorporated for costs involved in the purchase of a CAT excavator in the amount of $45,000. But I have our Public Works Director, Chase Carey, on here to follow up after I finish with this one. Part of the budget last year, when we looked at some of the things we needed to do in the Public Works Department, City Council approved funding for some pieces of equipment to be purchased for Public Works. During the course of this year, as we've been looking at trying to get that stuff purchased and figuring out the best prices we could get on everything, our Public Works Department got a phone call from Stanley Equipment, which is a local owned business, and they were paring down on some of their equipment. And we had the opportunity to buy from them a CAT excavator that had less than 1 hour of service on it at the time that it was purchased. The brand new model sold for $120,000 or more when we reviewed the models around, and they offered us a piece of equipment for $45,000. So about 40% of brand new costs. They had other offers pending on it that were actually more than that. So we had to make a pretty quick decision on being able to on whether we wanted to purchase it or not. This piece of equipment allows our Public Works Department to when they're digging trenches, working on water lines, working on sewer lines, working on lift stations, whatever they're working on, it allows them a lot an increased ability to safely access some of those deeper lines and some of the deeper places that they have to work on. I'm gonna let Chase follow up on this just a little bit, and then I'll let Susie follow up on this a little bit as well if she wants to add anything to it as far as how it fit into this year's budget. So Chase, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. As Mr. Jackson said, this will save us about $60,000-$70,000 in this year's budget that we won't have to request to replace our old backhoes. So that's why Susie, I know she was excited to jump at this opportunity. We're saving tax dollars, and we won't have to rent larger excavators with a longer reach in the future when we have to dig past 15, 20 feet. Thank you.
Susie, you want to talk about budget?
Yes, sir. This is going to come out of the fund balance. Of course, we've always carried a healthy fund balance for things like this, and this is a one-time purchase, so it qualifies for us to use the fund balance. And because of the savings, long-term, it should be saving us in terms of dollars amount. And that was why we made our decision at that time.
Anybody have any questions on 5B? Okay, proceeding on to item 5C. Discussion relating to authorizing the purchase of one combo vac truck through HGAC buy in the amount of $347,000. $668.68. And we'll have Chase and Susie follow up on this one as well. This is a piece of equipment that you guys approved as part of this year's budget and the capital project plan for the Public Works Department. And now we put the purchase off to the second half of the year until we made sure we had all the available funding in the budget to be able to cover it. We had covered it with revenues, and we're at the point now where we don't have any concerns with going ahead and getting it purchased. But the coming through HGAC, that's basically a buy board quote. So this is so that's how the pricing was determined for it. Chase, you want to talk a little bit more about what this is used for and how often we use the one that we have?
Yes, sir. As y'all all know, we have had some issues with our sanitary side of our infrastructure. And when we have these sewer main breaks and these failures, we are running our back truck day and night, keeping these citizens' homes down, keeping them flowing so they are not backed up. This is the piece of equipment we use the most. It's running daily, keeping our sanitary sewer, our collection line flowing. Yes, sir.
Okay, and Susie, you want to talk about financing?
Yes, sir. This is part of the 2019 lease purchase. Yes, council did approve for this. This is part of the checklist from last year. This piece of equipment, it's a cost item. That's true. It's not an investment, but it is serving the citizens, those who really need the help when things break down. That's why we're here. So I see a benefit to it. And since that has already been approved by council and it is part of a lease purchase, that's how we can fund for this equipment.
Okay, anybody have any questions on 5C? Okay, moving on, 5D, discussion relating to ratifying city manager's approval expenditures to Texas Pride Utilities for costs associated with an emergency rehabilitation of the Veronica Street sanitary sewer main in the amount of $49,495. Chase, you want to give us a little background on this one and tell them what happened?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. Wouldn't unmute. It was in April. We started receiving phone calls. Citizens' homes were backed up, as previously discussed, and we were running the back truck. As we were digging up the main, that entire clay line, it was a 6-inch clay pipe, and it was completely collapsed. And whenever the main is completely collapsed and we can't tie on to a good piece to make a point repair, that's when we have to have these emergency projects called in. And that's exactly what happened off Veronica. Yes, sir.
Okay, so one point in here, one of the things I've talked to with Chase about this, at some point in here, we're going to try to calculate or formalize our sanitary system and get some idea of what the total linear footage is that we still have in the city of these clay pipelines. In the 60s and 70s, those clay lines were used almost extensively for sewer projects. And they had a shelf life of about 30 years. And at that time, that was some of the best material you could get that wasn't overbearing in cost for city infrastructure. Of course, you're 15, 20 years past the usable life of most of those lines now. And as long as you don't have any problems with them, they still kind of, I mean, they're really, it's interesting when you dig these out, and maybe next time Chase digs one of these out, we'll do this. Take a video, just a shell left. I mean, it's just basically the outside shell of those things that's left because all the clay is gone. But once you disturb one of them, they just continue to break, and it's almost impossible to make the repairs, as Chase said there a minute ago. So a lot of these pipes, when you start trying to make a single point repair, it's impossible to make that part repaired because you can't find anything solid enough to be able to tie into. So sometimes some of those breaks turn into, as this one did, into 800 feet before we could actually tie into something that was solid enough that it wasn't just going to keep continuing breaking. Anybody have any questions on item 5D? Okay, moving on. Item 5E, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number 2020-0005, changing the zoning district for Ambrose, approximately 81 acres located near the intersection of Texas Avenue, FM 1765, and Delaney Road from R1 single family residential to the Ambrose Plan Development District, Ambrose PPD, establishing zoning regulations for the Ambrose PPD and amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to reflect this PPD. And I think I'm gonna ask Dara to start with this one. Dara, you want to give us a background on this one?
Yeah, that'd be great. So as council knows, we have started doing the planned development districts. You've had them as an option in your zoning ordinance for a long time, but you've kind of just gotten comfortable with using them. There's been one that passed before, and on tonight's agenda, you've got 2 of them. This one is specifically for Ambrose, which was formerly known as Saltgrass Phase 2. We asked the developers if they would be kind enough to change the name of the development so it did not get confusing for the staff with multiple Saltgrass Phase 2s running around. So that's where Ambrose came from. The other thing you'll see on your agenda is the item after this is the general plan approval. For plan development districts, that seems a little bit redundant, but because of the change in Chapter 212 of the Texas Local Government Code on plating regulations, that's a formal process for you now. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at both of them. So the plan development district is the actual zoning regulations that will apply to this whole area. And then the general plan is about the actual layout of the area and the phasing for project development. So if they ever need to change something, they can come back and amend the general plan without having to amend the zoning ordinance that applies to that area. You'll note the underlying zoning is R1. And so all that is included in the PDD ordinance is really when they're modifying the R1 zoning. And just one little piece of housekeeping, there was some discussion at planning and zoning about the wording for the front yard setbacks. And we've run across kind of a technical correction that we need to make. So when you get there and get ready to make a motion in the next meeting, we can go through that. But basically, let me see if I can get this right. They're asking that it require that any lot fronting a right-of-way less than 60 feet in width should have a front yard setback of 25 feet. And then all other lots have to meet the R1 single family zoning requirements, so 20 feet. And unless you have any questions for me, I know the owner and the developers representatives are all on the line to answer questions and even give a presentation if council is interested.
So, general question for you first, Dara. So, if I am generally like in favor of rezoning to help this, move forward, I definitely am in favor of the development, but I am not happy with the development plan per se. I'm not happy with what I see as the land use exactly. Should I speak on that in this workshop item or in the next workshop item?
So it would depend on what exactly your concerns were about the land use plan. I note that the zoning in general is just about kind of how it's used, but that could be dealing with some of your concerns. And generally on a planned development district, if they change one, they'll end up changing the other one if it's a major change.
Okay. I think so my concerns are basically just the same response I've had for almost every development that's come in front of us, which is I want to see more green space on this. I'm not pleased with what to me seems to be a very ticky-tacky style neighborhood development. And I'd want to see a lot more incorporation of green space, playground space, and some more specificity around things like street trees and trees in general, and the plans for landscaping. Because I didn't see anything in here that made it super clear to me.
If I can answer a little bit of that, landscaping would generally come much later in the development process. So any landscaping that is required by city ordinance, they're still going to have to do. And then we're also going to, end up nailing down a lot more of the detail once you get into the plating phase. I will note that council has a minimum green space requirement of 20% before we'll even consider a planned development district. So that's at least one of the requirements. And then unless you have something more that's directed at me, we may want to let the developers respond to the comments.
No, I don't think so. I think we can let her rip, and I would be happy to speak to all the fellows that are here tonight.
Okay, I'll start out. My name's Brandon Boozer with MI Homes. We are the developer slash builder. We do have a presentation that we'd like Sean Massock, our land planner, to go through a little bit, so we can we have something in front of us that we can sort of talk back and forth on. But a little background on MI Homes. We've been in business since 1976. We are in 17 markets around the U.S., including all major cities in Texas. We've been here for 10 or 11 years, and we build houses from the 180s to over 500,000. And we build in pretty much all parts of town. We in addition to that, we are in a lot of master plan communities, and we do develop our own homes. So it's about a 50-50 mix right now. So we are in Sienna Plantation, the Bridgeland, the Woodlands, and currently our closest community to Lamarck is in Alvin. It's Mustang Crossing, which would be a similar product to this. And we also build in a neighborhood called Southwind in Baytown that has a similar product to what we're proposing here in a similar development. And with that, I'll let Sean Massock sort of go through the presentation, and then we can discuss as we're going along.
Thanks, Brandon. So again, I'm Sean Massock. Met several of you as we all entered the room earlier. I'm with 7 Gen Planning, partner there, and also a part of Costello. We're the planning and landscape architecture division of Costello, who's the engineers on the project and doing all the engineering work for this. Project location, as you see, we kind of got the center of Lamarck according to the old Google maps, but the solid yellow line is your city limit line, with Texas City to your north, Hitchcock to the southwest. So this property borders the Hitchcock-Lamarck city limits line. Sunset Grove with KB is the property immediately to our west. You can see the Google map starting to show some of that dirt work happening there. The blue line you see running down the highway, that's the school district boundary line between Lamarck ISD and Hitchcock ISD as well. The next slide will show the master plan, but from here I wanted to mention off of Delaney Street is a collector street that comes through Sunset Grove and connects to our project approximately where the L is on this project location map. And then to the north here is Fleming at the northeast corner of the project that we also connect to. So those connections are shown here. You can see just west of our central park, that's about 2 acres, the entry from the collector road coming through Sunset Grove, and then off Fleming Street up here at the north is an entering point that takes you into the property that's north of the power line easement and south of the power line easement. So we're proposing around 290 single family lots. They're all 50-foot wide. Majority of them are 120 foot deep with just a few in there at 115 foot deep. No multifamily units are projected, all single family. Amenities include 2 parks, the over 2 acre Central Park right here as you enter the main portion of the community, and 21.1 or plus acres of open space, and that does not include the power line easement. That's exclusive of that power line easement you see going through there. So that's 4.7 acres more than the required 20% that Dara had mentioned earlier. So wanted to bring that out. And did not get this slide fixed, Dara. Sorry, there is no development agreement because we are in the city, and that's what the PDD is actually taking care of. She caught that on our zoning presentation. Here's the conceptual park master plan. So here we're highlighting the green space areas. Again, I've not highlighted the power line easement, but you can still see the aerial that's green in there. 2.5 acres of actual park between the 2 acre plus park, Central Park, plus a pocket park here at as a trailhead to at the detention pond. The Central Park will have shade structures, playscape, trails, open play areas, and a splash pad is proposed in there. And then the trail system, which would connect to that park, as well as get you over to through the streets and open space to the around the detention pond, with the trail around the amenitized detention pond with some fountain and so forth in there as well. Again, highlighting 4.7 more acres than needed there on the open space. Specifically within the PDD ordinance language, as Dara said, these are the items that are not the same, that would be different from the straight R1 single family zoning. One of those being the lot sizes. The PDD states that we will not be less than 50 feet wide, not less than 6,000 total square footage, not less than 115 foot deep. And then on the side yards, we have 2 side yards. The typical side yard setback is 5 feet, but where we have a street corner that is adjacent to a 50-foot right-of-way, which is this little exhibit on the right-hand side. The 50-foot right-of-ways are next to the park. In this case, we're indicating that a 10-foot side yard setback will be provided there, whereas when it's a side yard on a 20-foot right-of-way, it's the standard 5-foot. And then the front yard, as you see up on the screen here for you guys, is also the revised language from, as Dara was mentioning, from what was submitted to you all in the written form of the PDD. And that's stating that the front yards, when they're on a 60-foot right-of-way, will have the standard R1 setback of 20 feet. But where we have a 50-foot right-of-way, we would have a 25-foot front yard setback along those locations. And the next slide kind of shows what that really means, kind of in these perspectives here. So from building line to building line on a 60-foot local street or a 50-foot local street, the dimension is the same. The only difference that's happening is within the right-of-way of 50 or 60 feet in that front yard setback from the property line or right-of-way line to the house. It's 20 feet on the 60-foot right-of-way, where we still are able to fit vehicles, a minimum of 2 vehicles in the driveway, and still be out of the right-of-way off the sidewalk. And on a 50-foot, we actually have 25 feet, allowing a little bit extra space there for those cars to sit outside of the right-of-way. But in essence, when you're driving down the street, it's going to feel and look and act the same. The only difference is this invisible line that is the right-of-way line that just has property pins, so a few people would know the difference. Also in the ordinance talks about the driveways that we will not utilize more than 45% of the front yard and shall not exceed 18 feet at the property line, right-of-way line. The current R1 ordinance talks about has a percentage in there based on a 60-foot, so we just needed to adjust that percentage for a 50-foot road. So that's the purpose of that. And then discussing about the right-of-way lists and what we're willing to give in regards to a narrower right-of-way to increase the building setback there for that look and feel. In the ordinance, it also states that we'll provide a minimum of 23% total open space to mitigate for the higher density. The current plan as it's drawn is closer to 24%. So wanted to make sure you guys knew that was in there. That we will include pocket parks, ponds, walking trails, fountain areas, nature preserves, and we provided an exhibit that indicates those areas. Also that there's at least 2 parks, 1 play structure shall be installed and maintained within the district. Also within is a phasing plan that we had provided to city staff to review as well. And the purpose of the phasing within here was to ensure that you all would see that parks and open space are going to happen as the project develops. It's not, we're not leaving it to the end. We're providing it throughout the project. The first phase is going to have that Reserve A, that is that 2-acre central park within it. And I'm going to have Rick Haddock in my office kind of talk about the specific amenities here.
Okay, thank you. So with specific amenities of what we are proposing is with the Central Park would have a community splash pad and then a play structure, and that play structure would include, a swing set and a structure for all ages, from 5 to 12. And then around the adjoining both the play structures, we would have a shade structure and benches, trash cans throughout the open spaces, fountain pond within the detention lake, and then a proposed trail around the amenity lake. On the landscape side, we intend to be primarily planting with, Texas natives with a little bit of ornamentals throughout, accenting, within the open spaces and the adjacent reserves, entry monuments that identify the character of the Ambrose. On the proposed fencing, we do plan to be designing the community with brick walls and the entrances and little ornamental columns. And then around the perimeter, we would have a 6-foot perimeter fence that would align the perimeter of the community. And then within the interior, we would have a 6-foot metal fence for the properties that are adjoining the reserves, accenting the views into the open space. Surrounding each one of the communities would have their own, good neighbor fence.
And let MI kind of talk about the homes a little bit here as well.
Hey, this is Brandon again. We've got 4 pictures of some of our elevations that we would like to build out there. They should be on par or above what Friendswood is already doing in Delaney Cove, and it positioned to compete very well against KB, our next door neighbors. So you might show the other elevations there. We're building this product, as I said, in Mustang Crossing and Alvin, which is not too far up the road, and also in other neighborhoods in South Winds and Baytown, and our neighborhood in Magnolia Ridge. So there is product that's been developed and it's on the ground, and we're actively building it. And we do believe our average price point is going to be in around the $225 range. Okay, Sean.
All right, and that kind of concludes the presentation portion of it. So we can go back to any of the slides if you'd like with any questions and try to answer things.
Sean, this is Councilman Mitch Stitch. The utility space
greenway between phase 1 and phase 3. Will that be maintained by the HOA?
This is Brandon. Yes, it will be maintained. It will be, we'll have irrigation and sod and hydromulch in there, and we will make sure it's maintained because you're going to have backyards backing up to it. And I do anticipate that people will use it to walk their dogs and whatever else. We're not going to just turn our back to it.
Sure, that'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you.
On that note, is there a way to turn that space into something that is more intentionally, like you said, I'm sure people will use it if they're in that neighborhood. I know I would. Is there a way to ensure that it seems more intentional? Like, can you, because it's a utility right away, can you put a pathway there? Can you, would there be a way to connect that space more dynamically with some of these other spaces and make it so that it was more obvious you could use it?
We can definitely cross that easement with trails and sidewalks. It may be a little bit tougher ask of the utility companies to let us do it parallel down the easement, but that is definitely something we can ask about. But we can definitely cross parallel to where we can sort of interconnect phase 1 and 2 to phase 3 a little bit better.
Okay. Because yeah, I want to say, I think all of this looks really exciting, and I'm pleased to see something I didn't see in our packet or wasn't clear to me was the trail around Lake Amenity, which is a hilarious name for a lake, but I'm into it. I like that. And, you know, my main concern always with these new developments is, are we planning for high quality of life for generations to come, i.e., are we thinking about how much people can use their neighborhood and be outside? So can we incorporate, I would love to see this with a little bit more green space. I know you're already increasing and, you know, going beyond our 20%, but if there was a way to add one more small pocket park, maybe in the phase 3 area, or, you know, an area that if residents at one point wanted to, you know, start a community garden, or, you know, just have more of a green space that was available for just play and whatnot. I would love to see that. It doesn't necessarily need to be a park or like a playground space, but if there was a nice open green space that we knew was going to be treed and have shade, that would really please me. And if there was a way to find out from the utilities whether we could sort of more dynamically use that space in the middle, I would be super chuffed to see that.
Yes,
what are you
ma'am.
showing me now?
In phase 3, there is a reserve there that's not really named very well, but that is an area that we can do some amenities to. It shows on the park plan that it will be landscaped. It's up, yeah, right where he's pointing right there.
Okay.
And that's actually a pretty good size area. It's probably, I'm guessing, at least 7,000 square feet. It's bigger than, you know, one of our traditional lots, so we can definitely put some stuff in there that would really benefit the community. And you know, as for, I may have the engineer speak to this right now. The amenity lake looks like an engineer got hold of it, not a landscape architect, but there may be some opportunities to shape it a little bit, you know, better than a rectangle.
Yeah, make it a little sexier than a rectangle.
Yes, I always get in trouble when I say that because the engineers say we needed all that capacity, but when I start pushing on them, they usually come up with some more curves in it.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is also something for us as the city to work on, but I'm just going to continue to harp on trees. Like, if you guys were able to say, like, we commit to planting this many trees, or, like, you know, this type of trees that will be appropriate for, you know, the certain areas. We're not going to plant a ton of live oaks that will just bust everything up and, you know, that kind of thing. But it's, you know, it sounds like from what Dara said at the beginning too, like, I'm pleased, but I would love to see some more of those things that I just spoke about. But otherwise, I'm super excited for this PDD.
I appreciate that, and we can definitely do a little bit more conceptual work on the landscaping between now and the next meeting.
and this is kind of crazy. I assume I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Would it be possible in any way to incorporate a pathway that went around the entire development? Like, I guess it would be on the outside of the brick, whatever that, like the sound barrier wall. Is that a thing?
We do have some room behind a lot of the lots. I typically like to have sort of a buffer zone between neighbors. And we'll have to look at that a little bit closer to see how much room we have. And, part of it will be for drainage purposes, that there will be swells. So we're not putting water on our neighbors and they're not putting water on us. So I need to get with the engineers on that and see what room we have to actually make it have more than just a drainage purpose.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on item 5E?
Bill Frey, I want to thank you for everything that you put into this. Much appreciated.
Anything else on item 5E? Okay, Darren, so is there a separate discussion on item 5F, or did we cover that as well?
And unless council has specific questions, like I said, these are really two pieces for the same development. What you've got in your packet are the documents that basically make up the general plan, so that there's never any questions about what exactly made up the general plan. And it's just a separate approval. It doesn't require an ordinance, and you won't have to see it on next month's meeting if it's approved at this one, but you will see the second reading on the Plan Development District Ordinance.
Any questions from council on item 5F? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to item 5G. Item 5G, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2020-0006, changing the zoning district for 5.9114 acres located near the intersection of FM 2004 and Mitchell Lane, Galveston County Tax Property ID number 131351, from R1 single family residential to C1 general commercial. And Dara, I want to have you talk about this one as well.
Okay, so this is just a straight zone change. If hopefully the applicants on here can speak to it a little more, but my understanding is basically they're around a lot of the other big developments, and there is commercial in the general vicinity, but they have not been able to get anyone to purchase the property zoned as R1. So this is just the traditional zone change for the 5.9 acre tract.
Question for, is Ms. Sutton on here?
I did see Din. He might be helpful for some of that. One of us can probably answer some questions.
The adjacent property around this, is that not residential? That large tract that's next to it?
Yes, sir. In the Delaney Cove master plan, it shows that as being a future commercial tract. They've never really rezoned that area from R1 to commercial, but it is in their overall master plan, that master land plan. It shows it as being a future commercial development. So
how much property is that listed as commercial?
I'm sorry, this tract right here, sir?
Not the one in question here, but the adjacent properties around this one.
That, I believe, is approximately 25 acres, plus or minus. I can tell you, 1 second. I'm sorry, it's approximately 16 acres, and it wraps around this tract.
Okay. And then adjacent to that, is that not residential also?
North of that tract?
Something like about 80 acres, isn't it?
North of that track, I'm not 100% sure. Let me look at we'll need to look at the zoning. But this 5-acre tract,
Dan, can you share that screen so that everybody can see what you're pointing out, what you're talking about?
yes, sir.
Show where it's at in relation to the others.
Give me 1 second and I'll bring up the Delaney Cove master plan.
And yeah, just for clarification's sake, this is a separate owner. My understanding is this is not owned by the developers for Delaney Cove. These are actually separate owners that chose not to sell that tract.
Do you have the
Yeah.
CAD in front of you? Is that where you're looking at the pieces of property?
I'm sending you. Can you see the master plan?
Yeah, we can now.
So this out tract, the one that's kind of wrapped around just north of the sub landing section 11, and then the commercial tract that's the Lennar commercial tract that wraps around it. That's the out tract is the 5 point something acres that's wrapped around it.
The out track is let's see, which point to the track again that we're looking at?
Right here.
The out track, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The 16 acres, is that already commercial?
No, sir. No, sir. That tract has not. They have not submitted any type of plating or rezone for that area. They meaning Lennar.
But right now it is still residential, correct?
That is correct. It's still zone R1.
Now, north of the 16 acres, what do we have there? Residential?
North of this is the RV park.
Okay, but just north on the border, what is this area right in here? Just
the one directly above the commercial piece there, the proposed commercial piece, or the one you were pointing out, the wraparound piece. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, right there.
I believe this is the RV park. Let me check. Give me a second. So this is the tracking question. So this is zone commercial. Can you see the? Can y'all see the zoning map?
No, we're still seeing the first one you shared.
Okay, let me go back and check. That's right.
You have to stop. Yeah, stop sharing and start again.
Share again. All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So the red just south of on the southeast corner of Mitchell and 2004, that's zone commercial.
And the proposed piece with Delaney is right below that.
That's correct.
And then this other piece will be wrapped around by it.
That's correct.
So it would be continuous with the existing commercial.
Okay. But Delaney or Lennar is planning on commercial on that residential.
Yes, sir. Based on their overall master plan, that's what they're proposing. That
Okay.
their commercial development, their residential development is complete after the section 13, which is the last section in their current development.
All right. Okay, any other questions on item
Thank
5G? Anything else on item 5G? Okay, moving on, item 5H, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2020-0007, changing the zoning district for trails at Woodhaven Lakes, approximately 82 acres located near the intersection of Texas Avenue, FM 1765 and Delaney Road, from R1 single family residential to trails at Woodhaven Lakes Planned Development District, trails at Woodhaven Lakes PPD or PDD, establishing zoning regulations for trails at Woodhaven PDD and amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to reflect this PDD. And I'm going to have Dara do this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. So this is the other plan development district that is on the council agenda. You're not seeing a general plan yet because they weren't ready to get into something quite that specific at this point. So you're just looking at the zoning regulations. You will note that this is a lot more in depth because this is a true mixed use development. So the city hasn't seen anything quite like this. The developer, this is Mr. Padua's property that they were planning to develop. I know we've had some pre-development meetings at one point, and I believe we had a workshop in front of council where we all discussed it a little bit, and council had given them some feedback on the general land site plan that you wanted to see. So they have now come back with the formal application for the planned development district and the updated land plan. And this also includes the, it's got senior housing, senior cottages, single family residential, and a little bit of commercial in a reserve. And they also submitted their own ordinance. So they had written a good chunk of this. There's going to be just a few items that don't fit in a planned development district ordinance. So if there's something, you know, that you expect to see in a development agreement, you're going to see one of those coming in the near future as well. But this is specific to the zoning for that property. And I think Patty Joyner is on here to speak for the developer, if council has any questions.
Well, Dara, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
From the date of this passage, and so if we were to pass this tonight, what is the normal or reasonable time frame that we would be able to expect the Paduas to break ground and move forward? And again, I'm just saying normal, reasonable. Of course, anything can shorten it or lengthen it.
Right. I mean, that's really more of a developer question. I've kind of heard and seen things all across the board. You know, they still have to submit the general plan and we have to go through the second reading on the ordinance. So if you passed it tonight, that would let them finish securing the financing because the banks tend to get a little antsy if you don't move forward fast enough. So if you did that, passed it tonight, the second reading would be at the next council meeting. And they would theoretically have the general plan submitted in time for that meeting as well. And they could conceivably have the plat for phase 1 submitted also. And then I would expect they could break ground if they've got all their plans and everything ready in anywhere from 6 months to a year.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because the Paduas have been back and forth to our meetings and working with our staff for quite some time. And I would rather not delay them if at all possible. They have, they've did everything that we've asked them to do. And so I think if they can continue, we need to move forward.
Do they have somebody with a presentation there?
I think they, you know, council's talked about this quite a bit. And then you've got the details in your packet. Their ordinance is very detailed because it really holds them to all of the requirements that we came up with. But Ms. Joyner, do you want to speak to the development a little bit?
Thank you, Dara. Thank you, council members and mayor. They are anxious to get started. As Dara indicated, we can't do anything until we get past this step. We've accepted all of the changes that we had from PNC a couple weeks ago, and we're prepared to meet with Den and his staff in June, and our plans are to submit for the July meeting. So we're moving as fast as we can. We didn't think we could get into the June meeting for the P&Z and or the general plan, but we plan to submit for July.
And one other point there, Mayor Pro Tem, that at the last council meeting, you all approved their resolution for the annexation request, and I know they still got to go through that process too, to get annexed into the MUD. So we did do that at the last meeting, and now that's got to go to TCEQ, and they've got to finish the annexation process there as well. So I imagine both of those are probably going simultaneously.
Sure. Ms. Joyner?
Yes, sir.
Just one quick question for clarification. In the information we received for the meeting, it looks like there is a place for senior cottages, and then there looks like there's another place with 45 feet lots. Are those two different places?
The senior cottages, which are they're over on basically the east side of the community of the main entrance coming off of the FM road. Those are senior housing that could be ownership, where our senior housing, which is the 9-acre tract that fronts right on the FM road, would be rental. Those would be more like active living senior housing.
And then on the other side, there is looks like, according to your information, there's lots that range from 45 feet to 60 feet.
That's correct.
Those aren't senior. Those are regular.
Those are regular homes.
Homes for families or
families,
whomever.
Exactly.
So the senior cottages, will they be connected to the senior living?
Yes, they will. We'll have joint amenities. It's designed to be joint amenities and part of the same senior homeowners association and so forth.
So they would be able perhaps to progress from the senior cottages into the transitional living and the other senior facilities.
That's correct. Age in place, as they call it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Ms. Joyner, anything else you want to add while you're on here?
Well, we have been very, very happy to work with your team, your staff, your engineers. They've all been fantastic. Council's been fantastic in PNC, and we look forward to building this really great community.
Council, any other questions on item 5H?
I have a comment, please. I drive by there almost every day. I'm going to say that the clearing that they've done, which is allowed by law, is immaculate. I think they've gone over and above in their planning, and I'm in favor of what the Padawas are doing.
Good deal. Good deal.
And
any other? Go ahead.
Mayor, if I could just take
Ms.
this.
Joyner.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Ms. Joyner, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And please pass that on to the Padua family.
We shall. We shall.
Okay, Dara, go ahead.
I was just going to say, council members, if you can give a big thanks to your Planning and Zoning Commission members. It has been really painful to do all these virtual meetings, and they have been really great sports about it as we just drug them through many, many meetings to get these development issues.
Oh, I just wanted to, Patty, if you would please pass this on to the Paduas. I don't know if some of the language that's in this writing has anything to do with the number of times that I brought up trees, probably in an annoying fashion, but I just wanted to say that I very much appreciate the specific language around street trees and sidewalks that will accommodate trees. I notice it. I appreciate it. And of course, I'm going to want more trees in this plan, but I am very happy with it. I very much appreciate it, and I noticed it. So,
well, thank you. And we too, we want to create a sustainable community. Oops, sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if you drive by there, you'll see they left a bunch of trees. They've done a great job in the clearing.
Any other questions or comments on item 5H? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5I, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2020-0008, abandoning that portion of alleyway between 309 Stewart Street and 311 Stewart Street, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute quitclaim deeds conveying the abandoned alleyway to the adjacent property owners. And I'm going to have Dara speak to you on this one too.
Okay, so this is a home that is being torn down and replaced by GLO funded grants. My understanding is that the woman is rather elderly, and her nephew and the GLO and Yates Construction have all been assisting, and they've done a really great job of submitting, whatever we could come up with. They really are rushing to make the agenda because the GLO grants all have time limits on them, so they have to take action pretty quick. This is just an alleyway between 309 and 311 Stewart. We didn't see any issues with that. It's not being used. And then the neighbor at 311 Stewart has actually agreed to waive their claim on that portion of the alleyway, so they can give the entire thing over to the property owners for 309 Stewart. We will end up deeding it over, and then the property owners for 311 will have to sign off as well. But that's going to, at least as far as the plans show, that's going to allow them to build a conforming structure on a non-conforming lot, and it's going to make all the non-conformities a little less than they were, plus having a nice new house in the neighborhood.
Questions or comments? Okay.
my only question was, does the GLO often do things like this? This felt like the first time I'd seen anything. Like, what kind of program is this a part of?
It's a Harvey home, correct, Dara?
I honestly couldn't.
Is it a Harvey home?
That would make sense. I mean, and based on my contacts with GLO in general, but that would be a Susie Sutton question because I don't see the information directly.
Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure that when we discussed this in staff that this is a GLO home, and there was something about the lot size that was a problem compared to what they normally are. This lot was a different shape or different size or something, and so that was why it was a problem. And this was the easiest resolution to be able to get them freed up through GLO so that they can move forward.
Cool. Thanks.
Any other questions on item 5I? Okay, item 5J, discussion relating to authorize the mayor to submit a letter to the Texas Department of Transportation requesting the creation of an advanced funding agreement, AFA, for aesthetic and landscaping improvements at the FM 1764 intersection at I-45 in the city of Lamarque. And I'm going to have Colleen talk to you about this one.
Hi, so this is just a continuation of our ongoing I-45 expansion. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be the first of 4 AFAs that we have with TxDOT, and an AFA is an advanced funding agreement, and it basically establishes who's going to do what once the freeway is expanded and what the ongoing maintenance is going to look like. So this agenda item is just a letter from mayor to TxDOT, which will get our engineer at TxDOT to send us the AFA, which will come back to council next month for approval. And what we expect to see in there is who's going to take care of the landscaping, who's going to take care of pay the light bill, essentially, and things like that. It's all been discussed in previous council meetings and approved. we're sort of just firming everything up and making it official. So if you have any questions, we included the final selections that council made. I don't think you have had that specific PDF yet, but the final selections that you made are included in your packet. And then approved the plans for 1764 today, which we just sent to Robin for retention. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Hey, Colleen, yeah, these are the same ones that we looked at last year on the plans. They look good, still the same thing. One of the questions we had last year was that, and it was assumed that TxDOT would put in some sort of irrigation sprinkler system for it. And then we would take that over. I'd like to make sure that does happen so that everything plant just doesn't die.
Sure. Usually what they do, that is included, it will be included in the AFA. Usually they put in irrigation that lasts for about a year, and that's enough time for the plants to get established, and then you don't necessarily have to water it all the time anymore because they're going to be native species that do well in our climate. But those things will be addressed in the AFA, most definitely.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional comments or questions on item 5K or 5J? Okay, moving on, item 5K, discussion relating to approving resolution number R-2020-0007, accepting the Commissioners Court of Galveston County's invitation to join the Gulf Coast Transit District, GCTD, and authorizing the mayor to facilitate the transfer of existing transit services and other related agreements with the Gulf Coast Center to GCTD. I don't know if you guys will remember this. We talked about this it's been a while back in a council meeting. Basically, this is related to Connect Transit. The Gulf Coast Center has been the seat for that service for a number of years. They have decided that they really are not the proper entity to administer that. And it's probably, I think the group's decided that we're probably actually losing some opportunities for grants to try to expand Connect Transit with it being under the Gulf Coast Center. So there was a group called together. I went to a couple of meetings related to this, and the final determination of the group, I guess, was that to form this separate transit district, so that some of those funds would possibly become available to the Connect Transit system. Two most important things related with this: it doesn't change anything with Connect Transit. It doesn't change routes. It doesn't change any of that. And second, it's budget neutral. It doesn't cost us any additional money to do it. It's just basically transferring administration from the Gulf Coast Center to this Gulf Coast Transit District. Does anybody have any questions related to item 5K?
I have a comment, please, sir. I have resigned as the chairman of the Galveston County Transit District, and this resolution requires us to appoint a member of council and an alternate. And I'm just letting the council know prior to our regular meeting that I intend to appoint Casey McAuliffe as our representative and Tink Jackson as the alternate to this new district that's been formed. And I'm just saying that now so you can give that some thought before we get to that part.
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And this is, I totally don't know this. Is that something that you appoint and we ratify? Is that something that
I'm going to make yes, sir. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to make a nomination to that effect and then ask you guys to vote on it.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments on item 5K? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5L, discussion relating to authorizing the city manager to finalize TxDOT right-of-way parcel conveyances for current TxDOT improvements. This will be for parcel 5 on the State Highway 146 project and parcel 6 on the State Highway 146 project. 3 months ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, we talked about this in executive session and came out of executive session, and you all authorized me to negotiate the potential sale of those 2 pieces of property to TxDOT. This is the piece we talked about, the piece that's the front of the park as you head down Highway 3, and then the next right of way that we have that's along the ditch there, needed for that expansion project on the south end of town on 146. Original offers on those properties, I think one of them, the original offer was $1,000 because it's a very, very small piece of property. And the final offer that we ended up with on that one was $4,000. The other one, I think the original offer was like 11,000 or 12,000 or something. And it's in your packet. I think the final offer that we ended up with on that one was 20 something thousand dollars on those. Reality on these, if we don't agree to sell them to them, they're just gonna take them anyway because it's part of their project, and we'll have to go through that process, and then it would be at fair market value, and that's whatever their appraiser comes up with. So we saw about by sitting down and talking to them and trying to work these agreements out and not having to go through the condemnation process, we increased the amount that they offered right at pretty close to 50% for the 2 pieces of property. So one way or another, they're going to get them. So I would recommend that we move forward with selling them at the increased values that they've offered in the final offers. Anybody have any questions on those?
I agree, team. Those good negotiations. Thank you.
Item number 5. Any other questions on that one? Check one more time. Okay, item number 5M, discussion and possible action to adopt resolution number R 2020-0008 pertaining to current national events and commemorating the city of Lamarck's stance against racial discrimination. Before we start on this one, I just want to make a couple comments, and I'm going to turn this over to Councilwoman McAuliffe. The placeholder that we had in here, the language on the agenda was kind of intentionally, or kind of had to be left pretty generic compared to what we came up with, because at the time we put it on there, we had not finalized the format of the resolution or what exactly was going to be in there. So it sounds really broad, but that was intended to make sure we covered whatever went in there, and it wasn't specific to exactly what was going to end up in it. So I just wanted to point that out real quick. Councilwoman McAuliffe came to me with this last week, and her and I and Councilman Lane worked on this since then. We finally finished it up last night. All of you received a copy of it in your email this afternoon, and I'll turn it over to Councilwoman McAuliffe so she can talk about it. So Casey, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tink. Well, I think it must be pretty self-evident why I felt like the city should have a resolution, should have a public message to our community that frankly addresses the murders of George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd, and reckons with a problem as big as systemic racism in America, and also tries to not only acknowledge this problem and say we see it as a municipality and as leaders in our community, but also use it as, you know, we know that a resolution is a symbolic gesture, but it's also something that we then can look at and say, we said we would do this. We said we would hold ourselves accountable. We are a community committed to making ourselves healthier in all ways. And so that's really what this is about. And we had many, many discussions, Tink and I, myself, and then, myself and Chris and Tink. But poor Tink, he's had to hear from me a lot. Trying to make sure that the biggest underlying message was one of was of condemnation of violence and racism, and explicitly stating that we seek to be an anti-racist city, but also one of a vision wherein we combat these evils by supporting and enabling our police to do the best job possible, and acknowledge that we are a community that's lucky to have police leadership that is healthy and robust and full of integrity, and that, however, there is this nationwide culture that has a problem, and we want to do everything to be proactive, to support, and to make sure we stay on top of this. while of course expressing our collective grief and support for the Black and Brown community. So there we are. And this is just sort of the beginning. I am, after this resolution, I then plan to bring to you guys some other ideas about, policies that we might adopt as a city, and sort of taking the temperature of what's happening nationwide and looking towards data as to what are these smart things to do to support our police in the best way, to change a culture in our neighborhoods and in our community and among police and all of that. So this is just the first step that unfortunately, it's a massive tragedy that is the inciting incident. But it's just one tragedy among many, as we all know. So I'm happy to talk more about it, but you also don't want to hear me go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, Casey could talk about this for a while.
Yeah, if I may interject, Council, I am going to have Councilwoman McAuliffe read this into the record when we get to that item on the regular agenda.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on item 5M?
Thank you, Councilman McAuliffe. That was great.
Thank you. And can I also just say, Chief also made himself available to me to speak and to answer questions. And thank you, Chief Jackson. I really appreciate you. And
you're welcome.
You also showed up for your community in person yesterday at our socially distanced protest. And, you do the work, and it's very appreciated.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
If I could comment on that also, I appreciate the council allowing me to self-quarantine with my bride. As you well know, she has some health issues, and I'm doing my best to protect her, but I support everything that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on 5M? Okay, 5N, final one, discussion, possible action to authorize the city manager to send a letter of support to uphold a federal judge's ruling regarding mail-in ballots. This is another one from Councilwoman Casey, so I'll let her talk about it.
Yeah, so basically I probably everybody understands the context now. I think Robin sent that last email around to everybody, just giving us the update that there had been the federal judge ruling that fear of contracting the virus by being in a public polling place was enough reason to request a mail-in ballot. But then that went to the appellate court, and that is currently been stayed. And so the same requirements to qualify for a mail-in ballot stand, which means basically nothing's changed then from any other election. And I just feel very, very, very strongly, particularly because we are still in a moment where we're seeing virus counts go up and community spread is definitely happening. I feel that it is folly for the state to force people who want to participate in their democracy but have very rational reasons for not wanting to go to a polling place where lots of other people will be. I think that they should make it so that people can request a mail-in ballot and participate in their democracy. So I just would love for us to tell the state that.
And Mayor, can I make a comment on this one real quick?
Yes, please.
So from the legal side, just so we can explain to the public, we as a city don't get to give legal advice to citizens. So you filling out the mail-in ballot is your business, and we just do our best to process them on this side. So just know if you call and try to get the city to weigh in on that, that's really not a decision that we get to make. That's something you make based on the laws of the state and your own interpretation, and hopefully talking to your own attorney if you feel you need one.
Such a lawyer, Dara.
Really? We probably ought to hire her.
Before my phone rings off the hook, let me just make it clear, I'm not allowed to answer that question on the individual level. Not that I wouldn't want to, I just can't.
I actually think that we have sent letters in the past about varying issues that affect our city and our state and our country. And I certainly have no problem with Mr. Jackson signing off on a letter that would promote protection of people. Once again, I'm very humbled by you guys allowing me to protect my home and my bride, your first lady. And so I think it's a good move and can't hurt. So that's my opinion.
Well, Mayor, this is Councilman Mitch Stitch. I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one, and with you, Councilwoman McAuliffe. I do not believe that we should be involved in the legal system. I think this is something that should go to our state representatives and to our state law, because there are so many anomalies out there with the mail-in ballots, and so many of them that didn't get counted or get discounted. And it can inconvenience, it can eliminate somebody's vote, whether they are voting for you or someone else. And I don't want to see anybody's vote discounted or eliminated because of the checks and balances that are inadequate in the current system, let alone trying to expand it right now. We say we are seeing a dramatic increase, but that is a nomenclature without the actual numbers in comparison with everything else. We shouldn't be putting ourselves into partisan politics, and that is not our business at this point. I'll have to disagree with you. And Mr. Jackson, if this council votes for this, I will request that that letter state that it is not unanimous. I will not vote for it. And I will reserve my right as a council person to send under my title an opposing opinion to the same addressee that the letter goes to, if you so do it. But I do not think this is the right move for the city to be doing.
Council member, so noted.
Well, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
If I may, this is the same council that was urged to jump the gun by some of our members when it was time to shut this city down because of the issue with this pandemic. There were members that wanted us to shut down sooner than we actually shut down. This is not a legal issue, and this is not an issue for the legal system. This is simply a council deciding that they want to express the will and the wishes of their constituents. We have 4 districts and we have a mayor. All of us can hear from our members and express the will of those members to those that will be making decisions. We represent them. And so, in fact, we should represent them even in this area. One of the other things that I want us to understand is that we do everything that we need to do, many of us, through a cell phone or through a computer system. We have our groceries delivered to us, our food delivered to us, we pay our bills online. The way that we vote is antiquated. It was established at a time that we didn't have all of the different advancements in communication that we have today. To oppose this, to me, would seem like some sort of voter suppression. We don't want to suppress the vote in Lamarck. We want to expand the opportunities to vote in Lamarck. There has not been found in any of these situations any mass voter fraud. That's a myth. Where there was voter fraud, it was caught by those other persons who perpetrated it. I won't get political and I won't get partisan. But but that was one issue out of thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities for folks to vote by mail. I support you, Councilwoman McAuliffe, and Mayor, I agree with you. This is something that we should support simply because we're expressing the will of the people. And I'm not a voter suppressor. I'm a person that likes to expand for folks to have the right to vote.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do not believe this is voter suppression whatsoever. In fact, allowing it can actually result in such. And when it comes to representing the people, I hear more from the public that do not want to expand this system. So you may be hearing opposite, but I hear it from each and every one of your districts from people that I know, and the majority of the people that I'm associated with, they do not want it. So I'm speaking from that, but I am speaking that there are fallacies. They are documented. There has been much voter fraud with it. And until those things are addressed by the legislature and they look at everything, and you talk about where it goes from here to online voting or to how you register for it, because today you have to do it by mail. It is very intensive to do. It's not that easy, but and to validate it, that's the other problem with it. I am not in favor of it at this time until it can be sat down by the legislature and they look at expanding the system and making it easier, because right now it is full of holes.
Again, facts. Let's deal with facts. Every national poll that has come out on voter registration, on mail-in voting, says that the majority of the citizens of this country want mail-in voting. They want to have other opportunities, other avenues to cast their vote. That's not me saying what I heard from 2 or 3 people. This is national polling. And again, if we are limiting, let's look at the definition of suppression in this respect. If we are limiting people's opportunity to cast a vote, we are in essence suppressing the vote. That's common sense. If I have 5 ways to vote, and you reduce those ways, or you restrict those ways to 1 or 2 ways to vote, then by definition, you have just suppressed my opportunity to vote. This is not something that we should even have to consider. It's clear. This is, and I'm not suggesting that Councilman Mishich is a voter suppressor. But what I am suggesting is that to fight this is a voting suppression tactic that is being used by people that don't want people to vote. It's clear. If I have more ways to vote, then I'll have more opportunities to vote. If I have less ways to vote, then I'll have less opportunities. That, by definition, is voter suppression.
It is not voter suppression, Mayor Pro Tem, not in the least. Our current system guarantees that your vote gets counted. That is the biggest thing. And as far as your national polls, I don't know which ones you're quoting, but I've got different ones. If we want to go till midnight on this discussion, I can start pulling it up right now on my PC and start reading it off. Now, I'm against it. I've made my statement, and it will not be unanimous stated in that letter if you're going to do it.
It doesn't have to be. We can vote. It doesn't have to be. I said what I said. It's clear.
And I want any letter that's sent to note that it's not unanimous.
That's
well, I think that would only be appropriate, Robert. That would only be
I
appropriate.
think that's if I could enter. Go ahead, Councilman McAuliffe. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's the nature of the Brady Bunch call. Robert, you are absolutely, and you are in fact empowered to vote the way you think is right. And I would just say that, I think all the research that I did before bringing this to Tink, involved looking at lots of data around questions such as voter fraud and, states, there are 5 states currently within the United States that have, that allow all mail-in elections. And I think 21 additional states that allow counties to opt in and make that choice for themselves. And, among the biggest concerns that I saw over and over and over again, the ones that are the most concerning are just like time. The length of time it takes to count things. It's more about just like increasing efficiency and not about voter fraud. But I think I'm not trying to convince you. This was my recommendation. I say we put it forth, and I think it would only be appropriate that if we vote and you vote no, then it's not unanimous and it has to be noted as such. So, and then please, Mayor, back to you. I didn't mean to talk over you.
Mayor, you're muted, Mayor.
We good?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good, thank you. There was some sort of a controversial vote that was being played out on the parking lot of City Hall one year that I ran for mayor, and of course I've ran 4 times. And a news reporter asked me what my thoughts were, and in a purely unscripted moment of reaction, I said, it's never dangerous. And in fact, it's a good thing to let the people vote. So I say, we let the people vote. And I respect Councilman Mitch Titch's position on this. I know he's done some research on it. But once again, I'll have to say what I said on the parking lot that day some 8 years ago. It's never dangerous to let the people vote. We are the people, and government is of, by, and for the people. So I respect Councilman Mitch Titch, your decision to vote no on this. I think this is probably going to end up in courts much larger than ours. Mm-hmm. And I say we continue on and get to our regular meeting so we can make some decisions for the people.
Sounds good.
That's the last thing we had on the workshop, Mayor.
Thank you so much. So I believe I need to take a motion for adjournment of the workshop.
So moved. No.
I'll second.
I will second.
All right. we have competing motions and seconds, but I believe we have one of each. So
Robin can pick her favorite.
Madam Clerk, your call, please.
Robin,
I have Casey for a first and Bell for a second motion on that.
That's fine.
That's fine.
And then everybody just raise their hand. Mitch Stitch. Yeah.
We're good. Okay, so we'll move on.
7:38.
Thank you. We'll move on to the regular meeting. This is the regular meeting via teleconference Zoom, Monday, June 8th, 2020, beginning immediately after the City Council workshop. We're going to call the meeting to order, the roll call. I don't believe Councilman Lane has joined us. Is that the fact?
I don't see him.
Then once again, we, without objection from council, we will, due to his emergency, deem that an excused absence. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the regular meeting, minutes of May 11th, 2020, and the workshop meetings of May 11th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
Y'all still doing it?
I have Bell and,
Robin.
You defer.
I have Bell and Casey down for that one.
All right.
Oh boy.
Got you. Item 4, proclamations. I recognize that our esteemed councilwoman, with all that's going on in her life and our lives and in the lives of our country, had it skipped her mind about our proclamation for Pride Month. And so I provided that for her, and I'd like for her to read that into the record at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much. It means a lot to me that you remembered that it's Pride Month. So here we go. From the Office of the Mayor of the City of Lamarque, this proclamation. Whereas the month of June has been recognized since 1970 as LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender month, a year after the Stonewall Rebellion and riots that took place on June 28, 1969. And whereas the Stonewall riots were a tipping point for the gay liberation movement in the United States, its participants shaped a new cultural awareness of a population that was largely ostracized. And whereas over the years, the acronym has evolved to LGBTQIA, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning, intersexual, and asexual. And whereas it has been a tireless dedication by advocates and allies who strived to forge a more inclusive society, led by forward-thinking individuals who have set their sights on reaching for a brighter tomorrow, and has never been easy, nor smooth. And whereas, although attitudes and injustice still remain, we have come a long way since 1969, and we continue to raise awareness and to improve the attitudes of society and encourage inclusiveness. And whereas the fight for dignity and equality for all people, regardless of their identity, color, creed, race, and beliefs, are welcome here in Lamarque. And now, therefore, we, the City Council of Lamarque, declare the month of June 2020 as LGBTQIA Pride Month. In the City of Lamarque, we recognize all of those who have changed the hearts and minds by demanding equal treatment, and we recommit to bending the arc of our nation towards justice. In testimony whereof, witness the hand and seal of the City of Lamarque this 8th day of June 2020. Bobby Hockin, the mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Also wanted council to know that although it's not on the agenda, I have asked Robin to provide a proclamation similar to what we did last year for Juneteenth. And we will actually provide that to the June 20th celebration that's been announced. Item 5 is a public hearing, conduct a public hearing to hear public input to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0003, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 budget disaster fund for COVID-19 crisis by increasing various accounts, expenditures, and set forth in Exhibit A. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the time.
It is 7:43.
7:43, we will close the regular meeting, open the public hearing. Is anyone wishing to speak? Are you noticing anyone wishing to speak? Once, twice, 3 times. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the time.
Still 7:43.
Well, that was quick. So we will end the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting. Item 6 under old business, consider recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0003, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 budget disaster fund for COVID-19 crisis by increasing various accounts, expenditures as set forth in Exhibit A. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And we'll call the roll, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember District C.
Aye.
Councilmember District D.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mayor Hocking.
I'm an aye as well.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. Item
you.
7 is the consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Councilman Mitch Stitch wishes to pull item G off the consent agenda.
Is that for discussion?
For discussion, yes.
Okay, please continue.
As stated in the workshop, consent agenda, I oppose, or I'm sorry, let me back up and rephrase that. Not, strike that. I don't have anything to pull from the consent agenda under there. It'll be under new business.
Okay, thank you so much. That being said, anyone else?
Nope.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for
Was
the
that
vote.
Bell making the motion?
Yes, ma'am. That's me.
Do you have the second, Madam Clerk?
Seconded.
Y'all went silent. Bell, you made a motion and Casey
Yes, ma'am.
second.
Mayor Pro Tem made the motion. Councilman Mitch Stitch had the second.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
It was close. It was almost a tie.
Dara, can I ask a question real quick? Dara, do we need to say anything on the change on the front yard setback on our item?
Dara, did you get that?
Yes, sorry, I have a lot of windows open. Yes, we probably should go ahead and get that one pulled from the consent agenda so that we can make the wording change. It had to go on there that way because planning and zoning recommended it this way, but they didn't catch the error in the wording. And that's for the front yard setback that we discussed in the workshop.
Yes, ma'am. So
that's item E, correct?
E.
E, yes.
Correct.
Item E. So Ms. Purnell, are you recommending that we pull that?
Yes, please, Mayor, or at least vote on it again if the council will retract that vote and take that item again.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a retraction of the motion and second.
I withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw the second.
And we will pull that item. Is that amenable to the council and to our attorney?
Yes.
Thank you. My apologies for not catching that earlier.
Thank you. And then we will revote without any further discussion on the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Yes.
Councilmember District C,
Aye.
Councilmember District D.
Aye.
Okay. Mayor Hawking.
Yes, ma'am. I'm also a yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, council. And thank you, Ms. Purnell, our attorney, for bringing that up. Item 8, new business.
Hold on, Mayor. So
Yes.
now you need to do 7E
Correct.
separately.
Vote on that separate.
And I can, if it's okay, Mayor, I can read that wording that is requested by the developer, and then council, you can just make the motion to approve subject to the requested change.
Please, go ahead.
So the developer has requested that on page 41, the paragraph front yard should read, any lot fronting on a right-of-way less than 60 feet in width shall have a front yard setback of 25 feet. All other lots shall meet the requirements for an R1 single-family residential zoning district. Example, 20-foot front yard setback. Each street corner lot shall have the required front yard on at least one side fronting a street.
And so would you like a revote on 7E?
So now you will vote on 70 because you didn't vote on it in the consent agenda.
Correct.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on 7E.
So move.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Robin, did you get that?
I did get it. Mayor Pro Tem Bell, you're yes. You're
Yes.
Councilmember District C,
Yes.
Councilmember District D.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mayor,
Yes, ma'am. I'm also a yes.
thanks.
Are we good there, Dira?
Yes,
Good.
thank you. And those updated ordinances will be in Robin's email inbox so you can sign them.
Thank you. Item 8 under new business A, discussion possible action to adopt a resolution number R-2020-0007 pertaining to current national events and commemorating the city of Lamarck's stance against racial discrimination. I'm going to have Councilwoman McAuliffe read this into the record.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Whereas the City Council of Lamarque is outraged and appalled by the recent murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and countless other African Americans that have lost their lives to racial violence and police brutality in cities in America. And whereas the City of Lamarque grieves with the families and those communities across this nation and calls for accountability of those who perpetuate violence under the badge of law. And whereas cases of police brutality and the use of excessive force are among the most serious ongoing human rights and civil liberties violations in the United States and have led to community destabilization, a decrease in public safety, and the exacerbation of structural inequities. And whereas contemporary police practices that employ policing for low-level offenses or so-called broken windows policing have led to mass criminalization, heightened violence, and mass incarceration that disproportionately impacts Black and Brown people. And whereas historic, systemic, and pervasive racism and traumas of colonization and slavery make people of color, particularly African Americans, in their communities in our country fear for their families' health, safety, and lives every single day. And whereas racism is a social system with multiple dimensions, individual racism that is internalized or interpersonal, systemic racism that is institutional or structural, and is a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on the social interpretation of how one looks. And whereas racism unfairly disadvantages specific individuals and communities while unfairly giving advantages to other individuals and communities, and saps the strength of the whole society through the waste of human resources. And the City of Lamarque's collective prosperity depends upon the equitable access to opportunity for every resident, regardless of the color of their skin. And whereas racism causes persistent discrimination and disparate outcomes in many areas of life, including housing, education, employment, and criminal justice, and an emerging body of research demonstrates that racism itself is a social determinant of health. And whereas cases of police brutality and the use of excessive force have robbed countless communities of precious lives, have inflicted intergenerational harm and trauma to families, and are intensifying our nation's mental health crisis. And whereas the murder of George Floyd was an act of intolerable violence, and other similar acts that have occurred across this country in recent years are unpardonable, and must serve as a wake-up call to every human being that recognizes life as both a gift and a human right. And whereas the mayor, city council, city manager, and the Lamarque Police Department find that the conduct of police officers who engage in racial profiling and excessive force, which can include shootings, brutal beatings, fatal chokings, and any other excessive treatment, is a violation of the Constitution of the United States. And whereas no change will be realized until all citizens of this country stand beside those exclaiming for justice. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lamarque. The Mayor, City Council, City Manager, Lamarque Police Department, and all city employees join with America in sharing its disbelief, sorrow, shame, and anger. And we collectively assert that racism is a public health crisis affecting our entire country. And we collectively agree to work to progress as an equity and justice-oriented organization, with the City Council and its staff leadership continuing to identify specific activities to further enhance diversity and to ensure anti-racism principles across City Council leadership, staffing, and contracting. And we fully support and strongly endorse peaceful unification throughout this country, opposing this and similar deplorable acts of violence against persons of color and those of different ethnicity, religions, beliefs, or expressions, both now and in perpetuity. And we support our police department's commitment to equitable treatment of all our city's citizens by sustaining and expanding the existing de-escalation training for PD as directed by City Council. And we will continue to actively support inclusivity within the Lamarque Police Department. And we will promote equity through all policies approved by the City Council and enhance educational efforts aimed at understanding, addressing, and protecting against unintended racism in our city. And we will continue to advocate locally for relevant policies that improve health in communities of color, and state that we support local, state, regional, and federal initiatives that advance efforts to dismantle systemic racism. And we pledge to always promote and support policies that prioritize the health of all people, especially people of color, by mitigating exposure to adverse childhood experiences. And we pledge to establish ongoing racial equity training with the goal of reaching all City of Lamarque leadership and staff. And we will encourage racial equity training among all community partners, grantees, vendors, and contractors. And furthermore, we call upon our community to join with us in committing to introspective evaluation of ourselves as public servants, citizens, and brothers and sisters regarding this unthinkable event. And be it further resolved that we declare there will be zero tolerance for police brutality by the City of Lamarque Police Department. It is passed, approved, and adopted by the City Council of the City of Lamarque on this 8th day of June, 2020.
Thank you, Councilwoman. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
You're muted, Robin.
Yeah, you're muted, Robin.
I'm sorry. Councilmember District A, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Councilmember District C, Mitch Titch.
Yeah, aye.
Councilmember District D, McAuliffe.
Aye.
And Mayor Hawking.
I'm an aye as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Item B, discussion, possible action to authorize the city manager to send a letter of support to uphold the federal judge's ruling regarding mail ballots. I'll entertain a motion. First of all, Councilwoman McAuliffe, would you like to read that into the record?
It's not been drafted yet, Mayor.
It's not up yet?
No, it's not been drafted yet.
Okay, great. So how do I proceed?
Yeah, you can proceed on a vote on the title there, and then the letter would follow the title if that's what passes.
Council, you have any problem with that? Please state if so.
No.
No, that can be the process.
Wonderful. Then
That can be.
Go ahead.
Will we see the letter before it's sent out, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I can send it out to everybody before it's sent out.
Okay. I will reserve my right to send my own opposing letter to it.
Thank you. Then I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Yes.
Councilmember District C,
No.
Councilmember District D,
Aye.
Mayor.
Mayor is an aye as well. Item number 9, discussion, possible action regarding appointments and/or reappointments to fill various positions of boards and commissions. Does anyone have any appointments or reappointments?
You do, Mayor.
Hearing done. Thank you for reminding me.
Sorry.
Jeez.
I thought it was muted.
It is to the
Yes, I am.
Gulf Coast Transit District.
Yes, I absolutely have that written here, Mr. Jackson, but I appreciate you reminding me. You probably would have had to remind me about 11 tonight, but I'm clearly functional at this point. I would like to appoint or nominate Casey McAuliffe to the Gulf Coast Transit District, a newly formed entity, and Tink Jackson as the alternate. Just to let council know, the Galveston County Transit Board is now defunct. I have resigned as chairman of that board, and these are my nominations for the newly formed board. And so I'll ask for a second.
Let me ask you this, Mayor. Have you had?
So move.
Casey? Before we, let me ask you a question. Did you have a chance to talk to Casey? Is she ready?
I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to be on this
That's all I
board.
need to know.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
I'm really excited to learn more about transit in our county. So yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah, I did that, Mayor Pro Tem, and I appreciate the question, but I remember her expressing interest in an earlier meeting months ago. And so, yes, I did contact her to ask her if she was still interested. And of course, that was affirmative. Mr. Jackson has been zooming in on those meetings in this transition period. I've resigned as chairman of that board that I served for a few years. The previous board, I'm resigning from a whole lot of boards as my wife and I cruise on towards kids and grandkids and retirement. And so I appreciate Councilwoman McAuliffe and Mr. Jackson wanting to serve in this. So have I asked for a vote yet?
You got, I think Councilman Mitchell seconded your nomination. So you're good. You're good.
All right. Well, then I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Yes.
Councilman District C,
Aye.
Councilmember District D,
Aye.
and Mayor Hawking.
I am so grateful to be an aye.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. And so I'll entertain, first of all, any comments or announcements?
One announcement, don't forget tomorrow night, special meeting on the bond.
6 o'clock bond meeting. Yes, sir. Thank you.
6 o'clock bond meeting.
And I cannot be there. I have shared that with Robin, but I apologize. I have a board meeting that I can't miss.
I understand. It's a lot of boards going on, a lot of Zooming happening.
We're all just hanging out and being floating heads together. So
I'm telling you what, it's a new day in our all of our lives. So I feel like we'll probably have a quorum. Does anyone dispute that? And Dara, am I allowed to even ask that?
Yeah, you can ask
Sarah.
about quorums and meeting schedule.
Yeah. Is there anyone that feels like we won't have a 3-person quorum for tomorrow night's bond discussion?
Not
be
at this
there.
time, Mayor.
Excuse me?
I said, not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Announcements. We have Father's Day coming up for a lot of people, and important day to recognize, the same as Mother's Day. And I know there's a particular new father to a young little girl. This will be his first. Is that not right, Ms. McAuliffe?
that's true if in my family, and I think that's also if Chase is still on this call.
That's true. Chase is a new father. So
Yes, sir.
congratulations.
Appreciate y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I also have a tremendous, miraculous announcement along those lines as well. Are you ready?
You better not tell us you're about to be a daddy.
My son-in-law, due to the tenacity of his wife, my daughter of 14 years, after 40 years of life, has found his father. And his father has embraced him along with the whole family. And we're just so absolutely happy for him. I'll always be Pops, but now he knows his dad. And that's a blessing. So if there are no other announcements, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Everybody wave. Love you guys. See you tomorrow night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Mr. Jackson, is there any reason you need me tomorrow night?
No, dear, I don't believe we do.
I don't think so either. So I just thought I'd give you the.
Yeah, we'll give you the evening off. Are you available in the morning to talk?
Yes.
Okay, I will give you a call tomorrow morning on the text message we had.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.